So you see, the 19th chapter, we're on to something here that's very significant. And chapter 19, verse 10, what do you have here? 19, verse 10. The men, is that plural or is that singular?
Plural.
And then they put forth what? Is that plural or singular? Are you seeing something here?
And pulled God into the house to them and shut the door.
So there's one hand here. It's all you need is one hand to God. Jesus said, I can cast out demons with my little finger. We're afraid of demons, but Jesus, his finger, they're afraid of his finger, okay? And then the verse that
And they smote the men that were at the door of the house with blindness, both small and great, so that they were carried themselves to find the door.
Yes, now the blindness, that blindness basically was there already. Now Genesis, again, the verse we read in Genesis 18, Genesis 18:9, they said to him again, is that plural or singular? And where is Sarah thy wife? And he said, behold in the tent, and he said, I will certainly return unto thee according to the time of life. Notice he said, singular? So one speaks, they all speak. They're in total concord. They're in complete harmony. They only work in concert with each other.
Who is that, Chuck? Jesus, the Holy Spirit? Is Jesus and Jesus?
It has to be. For one thing, we left off before we took our break, where the homosexuals were saying, one of them is judging us, right? One of the Godhead is judging us.
Right.
There's only one that's capable of judging us. Yeah, can angels judge us?
No.
Do you know who judges angels?
We
do. 1 Corinthians 16, we judge angels. 15, yeah. So, can man judge?
Yeah. Angels, not man.
Can man judge? Look, we're not just talking about judgment here.
The Son of Man can.
Yeah, the Son of Man can. Okay, we're talking about, let's look over here at 1 Peter and see what we're talking about. This is not just some guy's going to die and be buried. That's not at all what's being spoken of here. In the book of 1 Peter, it says here, I'm reading from 2 Peter actually, verse 8. The righteous man dwelt among them. He's seen and he heard, and he was vexed at his righteous soul from day to day with their unlawful deeds. Now, come on now, verse 8. Be honest with me. Okay, I'm in 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 8. Okay? Now I want you to be honest with me. How many of you really and truly down deep in your heart, when you read the paper, sometimes when you even look at a commercial on television, when you go out in society and you see a bearded man loving another bearded man, you see him promoting it on advertisements and television, women loving other women in a way that is intimate and reserved only for the opposite sex, what does it do to you? If it don't make you sick, you're not going to heaven. I'm telling you right now. You are lost. You're lost. If when you vote, you don't vote for people who oppose same sex. That's why I brought Bob Marshall singing here. I'm not politicking petitioning you to vote for anybody. You vote for anybody you want to. It's not my job to tell you to vote for it. But the reason I'm voting as an independent tax-paying American citizen for Bob Marshall, he wrote a law saying that marriage is what God designed it to be. And Lord willing, he's going to be speaking here, we're hoping, on July the 13th, May the 13th. It's only a few weeks from now.
Well, we're voting for people who are voting in our place. They're our representatives. Right. We're not voting for people who share our value system.
Yeah.
Then you're wasting your, I don't know what you're doing.
Yeah. Right. There, yeah.
Congress.
Yeah. There are a few people.
Frank Wolf's place.
Wolf's pretty good.
Frank, well, he's gone. He's retired.
Yeah, but he's good.
Well, he's retired.
Who?
This is the next congressman.
Who's retired?
Frank Wolf.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
This is
yeah,
Frank
yeah,
Wolf's seat.
yeah.
What's this guy's name?
Bob Marshall.
But anyhow, the reason that I say I'm voting for the man is because he shares what our brother said here, our sentiments. There's a few leaders who still share our sentiments.
There may be others, but
We know this guy, right?
Bob Marshall wrote the Virginia Marriage Amendment.
Yeah.
He wrote it.
So, I can't sleep sometimes at night. I'm telling you, I pray and pray and pray. We're right now in a course of prayer and fasting for 40 days, right down to the hearing in Richmond on whether that this judge is going to be overturned or not. Whether she's overturned or whether she's not, we need to pray and be like the 3 children in the fiery furnace. Did they go into that fiery furnace thinking they were going to win? They didn't know whether they were going to win or not, right?
So it didn't matter.
Yeah, they said, you know,
Protect us, but even if he doesn't.
that's what they said. Even if we don't win, even if we don't get protected, even if we die, we're still going to go down fighting.
He's still our God.
Exactly. And that was what righteous Lot. The only reason he was righteous, he was the nephew of Abraham. So he did have a pedigree. Do you have religious people around you that encourage you, that are an example to you, an inspiration to you, to want to live closer to Jesus? You ought to be thankful for that. You ought to be 100% thankful for that. Are you around people that you would be glad that your children would get to know them, and you can say, this is the kind of example I'd like for my children to follow, you know? That's what this community is all about. If we have to die together, fight together, go down together. But Lot was vexed. And but notice this in verse 9. I like this. Read that to me.
2 Peter?
Yeah, 2 Peter 2:9, right.
The Lord knoweth how to deliver the godly out of temptation, and to reserve the unjust unto the day of judgment to be punished.
Oh, my. He knows 2 things, right? He knows how to rescue your old hide out of evil. And he knows how to punish the evil ones. So we're going to make a choice, right? If we don't go to the polls. Now, think about going to the polls in 2 weeks. I think it's April the 24th. It's on the card there. I brought them for you if you want them. I even brought stickers for you if you want to use them. If you don't, just don't leave them here. It's the first year I put a sticker on my car. That's how sick I am. I've never gotten involved like this in my life. But right now I'm like Lot. I'm vexed. I'm just disturbed. For one thing, I don't want my grandchildren or their children to come up to me and say, "Hey, Pappy, we're getting into the gay lifestyle." And I'll say, "Well, how did you get into that?" Say, "Well, you didn't say anything about it. You were silent. So you must have supported it because you never condemned it. You never said anything against it. You never judged it." You see, we're afraid to judge because we're afraid we'll lose friends, lose votes, lose church members. If they all leave, I'll stand up there and preach by myself. Because pleasing God is greater than pleasing man. Now, you go up here in 2 Peter, it says here that he turned the cities in verse 6 of Sodom and Gomorrah into ashes, condemning them with an overthrow, making them an example of those that suffer afterward that should live ungodly. Now, in verse 6, my translation don't look like it's correct. I never noticed this before. Somebody read it from your translation and see if it gets a better.
I got King James that says, in turning the cities of Sodom, Gomorrah, into ashes, condemn them with an overthrow, making them an example unto those that after should live ungodly.
Does the rest of yours say that?
What version do you have?
King James.
I got the New American. What do you got?
And if he forgives.
I've got the NIV.
You got the NIV? Does any of yours have eternal fire in there?
To destruction by the reducing them to ashes.
Burning them to ashes.
Having made them an example.
I might be using the wrong verse then. Let me see my text here in my manuscript. I might have gotten the right verse or the wrong verse. I don't know, but
Well, it says, for if God did not spare angels when they sinned, but cast them into hell, and committed them to the pits of darkness, reserved for judgment, and did not spare the angels.
Chuck?
what?
You want chapter 3, verse 7? But the present heavens and earth,
No.
by his word are being reserved.
No, I wanted 2 Peter 2:6. Now, I don't understand it. Why the eternal fire is not in my text. It's in some text. They left out eternal fire. None of your texts have it in there. So that really got me hung up tonight. I'm going to have to lose some sleep over that now. But the thing is, right?
Turn them into ashes is pretty well saying that, isn't it? Turn them into ashes.
Yeah. Well, did he say he turned them into ashes?
Turn them more into ashes.
Reducing them to ashes.
Says it's an example of eternal fire. It might be in Jude. Let me look at Jude here. I hate to hold up my class here. I want to finish this. Forgive me for not being prepared on this one. Just for my own satisfaction, I'd like to rest this. Read Jude 6.
And the angels which kept not their first state, but left their own habitation, he has reserved in everlasting chains under darkness into the judgment of the great city, of the great day, even as Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities about them.
There it is. There, you got it now. Yeah, okay. Whew. Got me worried for a minute.
Yeah, vengeance of eternal fire.
Yeah, I was reading the wrong verse. Okay, I'm sorry about that. I got to correct that in my manuscript too, because this is not complete yet. I've never done anything that I haven't made a mistake. All right, that's Jude, what? 7, right?
6 and 7.
Okay. All right, now I want you to get this. We're not just looking at people dying and being incinerated, becoming a part of the ashes of the city, and sinking into a hole 1,004 feet deep, 40 feet deep. This is an example of what? Yeah. You see, this judgment here is not to be taken lightly. Now, why did Jesus go down there and judge them? In other words, he said, I heard a cry, right? There's a cry coming out of the city, right? So he's going down there. Is he so ignorant that he doesn't know whether they should be judged or not? Of course not. What's he going down there for? What made him mad when he went down there?
There wasn't a righteous one other than
No. What got them in trouble?
they went away from God and they
No. What got them in trouble?
Somebody judging them.
Judging them. Say that. They were judged. Say that. I would rather judge than be judged by some judge down in Norfolk, wouldn't you? You know, they say you're being judgmental. Who was judgmental? when the judge says we're going to overturn the Marriage Act? Who was judgmental? Here's one judge that is okay to be judgmental, but don't you be judgmental. Are you with me? Well, we can't talk back. We can't fight back. Sodom had the gun loaded. They had the whole jury stacked. They had all the odds in their favor, and they were not used to being judged by any preacher. That's what got him in trouble. Judgment from Jesus Christ. Now, he didn't go down there to find out how bad they were. He heard the cry. He already knew how bad they were. Now, this word cry used to puzzle me. He said, I've heard a cry coming up, right? I used to say, what kind of cry was this? So I looked it up in the Strong's, and the word is they were shrieking. They were in agony, just shrieking to the top of their lungs. So that cry is the same word when God said, I heard the cry of God's people in bondage in Egypt. Their cries come up. Was it a cry of good or bad? Yeah. It was a bad cry. Do you think that they were under a yoke? Or were they just crying for no reason at all? A yoke, yeah. It was a burden cry. Now, who in Sodom could have possibly been crying out, shrieking under a burden? Who?
Lot and Abraham.
No, the cry was coming from Sodom. It was coming up from the earth. He heard the cry coming out of Sodom.
Probably the victims, the children, the victims, the people who
Look,
defend themselves.
he's on the right track. Look. The people in Moses' day could not defend themselves in Egypt. They were crying out. It said every man and every boy was into sodomy. Don't take long to get them into it once you introduce them to it. Okay? Once it becomes a psychological bond, it's almost irreparable and irreversible. But it doesn't say anything about the babies. Now, were there babies down there? Were there babies in Sodom? Well, there had to be. Well, how would you get babies in Sodom? Okay? You know, 2 roosters can't make a chicken, right? So it's like the Catamites. In the margin of your 1 Corinthians 6, it says the effeminate and the homosexual, they're called sodomites. These are little children who are introduced into the sodomite lifestyle when they're young. How young? How young do they have to be introduced into it? Remember, it's just raw sex, right? Doesn't have to be any compassion, no love, no mercy. Just satisfy yourself any way you can. I hesitate to say this, but I'm not going to say it. I mean, it'll make your hair stand up on end. How young? So what's a little child going to do? Now, catamites are little kids that are raised to be this way by adopted parents or families. Of course, they didn't have artificial insemination like homosexuals do now, so somebody is a surrogate parent that they can raise their kids. But there's no way they're going to be raised in a family like that without becoming sodomites. I don't care who it is. And there's no way in the world that you can raise them in that way that they're going to have a healthy mentality toward what love is, what natural affection is, and it's going to be hard to convert them to Jesus Christ because they've got a totally different complex. It's hard to believe what it would be like for you or me to be raised that way and to be natural, productive citizens later on in life. It's unbelievable. There's a cry coming up. Are these kids going to be happy with this kind of arrangement when they're young? They're going to cry, aren't they? What are they getting out of it? They're getting nothing. They're just being raped. Well, what about some of the women? The women aren't mentioned either. How were women treated in a sodomite society? Pray tell.
Not very good, probably.
Exactly, not very good. Now, I haven't time to give this to you, but it'll be another one that'll make your hair raise up on end. There's a book that was written at the time of Sodom. It was a contemporary book referred to in the Bible called the Book of Jasher. Jashur. You can look it up on your computer. Read chapter 14 and 15 of the book of Jasher on your computer. It's very easy to read. It's just one verse, one verse, one verse. You can't believe the stuff they did in Sodom and the way they treated women. Therefore, the women are crying out too, because they're robbed of natural affection, and the only reason that they had women was to have babies. That's the only reason they did it, because they wanted to populate the city. Other than that, a woman was no good for anything.
But they were destroyed also, though, when the Lord...
Well, of course they were destroyed, because the women, if they're not raised with natural affection, they're not going to have natural affection. Why do you think Lot's daughters were the way they were? These daughters were willing to go out and be raped by these guys. And Lot was protected. Of course, he realized that the men that were visitors were divine. So, but who, can you imagine, how can a man, you know, if something like that were to happen to one of my daughters or one of my granddaughters, I tell you, you don't want to see me, what I'm going to do. You don't want to see me, what I'm going to do. If I can't get a gun, I'll get a ball bat. But I'm just not ready for that. I pray God will never put me through that. I pray like Abraham, I'll die before I ever see anything like that.
I just want to say, Chuck, wonder why Lot was in that mess. I mean, if he's a man of God, why would he have stayed in such a...
You have to read the book of Jasher and see what he was exposed to all of his life. Remember, he's getting exactly what he asked for.
The city life.
Yeah, he wanted the city life.
And Abraham wanted...
Yeah, Abraham said, I'll take the high ground, you take the city. He said, okay. He pitched his tent towards Sodom. Next thing you know, he was at the gate of Sodom. Next thing you know, he was in Sodom. Next thing you know, Sodom was in him.
But how could he be so innocent?
The only reason he was innocent is because he believed in the one true God, and he believed that what they were doing was wrong. That's the only thing that made him righteous.
Yeah, but you think he would have been perverted?
All you got to do is just do what's right in your own eyes, because in the book of Judges, they got into that mess all over again.
Yeah.
They did what was right. Everybody did what was right in their own eyes, and they went to hell.
Yeah.
The Benjamite concubine.
Right. Now, I'm going to wrap this up now. You've been very good. Appreciate you. You've been listening very good. Appreciate you. I thought this was going to be too tough for you. Okay, now, when you have a cold, callous disregard for women, these men had no heart, no pity, no compassion for women. Now, it says in the book of Peter that a true husband, he loves his wife. And he loves his babies. He loves his children. And it says in the book of Peter that a man should treat his wife with compassion as the weaker sex, as one who is his equal in the spirit, and who also is a co-heir of eternal life. I mean, Peter makes it very clear. And he said, if you don't treat your wife in a compassionate, loving, long-suffering manner, he said, your prayers will not be heard of God. In other words, God said, I'm going to treat you the way you treat your wife. And I remember one time I treated my wife with very caustic, casual abuse. I spoke out, I screamed at her, I hurt her, and she began to whimper. She didn't cry, but she was whimpering. And my heart literally broke in two to see her with tears running down her cheeks. My wife, the one I love, the wife of my youth, crying like a little baby because I verbally raised my voice, I abused her. And I took her by the hand, I asked her to forgive me. I said, God, I don't want this to ever happen again. Never again do I want this to happen. Because the way that I treat my wife is the way I treat myself. A man's got to love his wife as he loves his own body, right? But if he's a homosexual, who does he love? He can't have that kind of love, you see. And you wrap this thing up, you're going to see here that babies and women are not mentioned in the text. You're going to read in my book about this girl that was born. She survived an abortion. The doctor took her brother, not knowing that she was a twin. So when he took the brother and aborted the brother, threw the brother into a garbage can, took a pair of scissors and stuck it through his neck and left him dying there, wreathing in agony. And remember that, you know, they have these stethoscopes. They have certain radar, I forget what you call it, to monitor the baby in the mother's womb. Right, sonograms. And the doctors say that if they have to do any kind of penetration to work with the woman, the little baby, as early as months, feels the pain. The little baby squirms if it's touched with something. Now, you don't hear the cry of that baby in the womb, do you? But God hears the cry because he created the baby in the womb, didn't he? Not only that does God hear that cry, but can you imagine the cry that God hears when the doctor sticks scissors in the back of its neck or puts sulfur in there to burn the baby out and then just throw it in cold storage? And this little girl was thrown into cold storage. I mean, the boy was, but the little girl, when the mother went home, she said, I still think I have a baby in me. And she was so in such remorse because she aborted her, the twin, that she decided she's going to raise the sister. But the sister was so affected by the abortion of her brother that she was practically an invalid. But the mother repented and raised that baby. And I got a record of her. You can read about her on your internet. I'm just saying, as we look at this, we see that the conditions that are in Sodom are beginning to replay right here before your eyes in the United States of America, more and more. And there's an old story of a man who was walking through the forest, and he saw a wall. And he looked up and said, I wonder what's inside this wall. So he scaled the wall, looked, and here was this beautiful city and beautiful people with robes on, and they were walking around in the city. So he came down the other side of the wall thinking that he was going to get shot or injured, but no one bothered him. He looked at people, but they didn't look at him. So finally he went up and tapped one on the shoulder and began to talk. And he found out that the man was blind. And then he began to question other people, and they were all blind. And the story says that it was called the City of the Blind. So the guy says, well, this is interesting. Everybody here is blind. Well, they love to hear him talk because he talked about the world of sight and the world of outside of their little city. And so he became a very famous storyteller because all he did was talk about things that he saw and describe it in such vivid detail that blind people said, this is fascinating. So they finally said, we're going to elect you to be the king of this city. And he said, well, I'll be glad to. He said, I've really fallen in love with you people, and I've fallen in love with one of the maiden ladies here, and I'd like to ask for her hand in marriage. Well, they said, okay. So the elders of the city deliberated and said, we've decided that we will give this young lady to you as a bride, but under one condition. And he said, what's that? They said, you're going to have your eyes struck out. Well, the man thought for a while. He thought that was too great a price to give up his sight just to live in that city. And that's exactly what we're dealing with here right now. We're studying apocalyptic literature. It says that Jesus was crucified in Sodom, right? How was he crucified in Sodom? Come on, somebody expound on that. Revelation 11:14. He was crucified in Sodom. How was it?
He died for their sins.
He didn't die. It said spiritually he was crucified in Sodom. What? Okay, mark this down. Put this down in the margin of your Bible. Put it down in the margin of your notes. Have you ever heard of a prototype? Okay. What that mob rape was a prototype of what Christ went through on the cross. In their mind, as you said, they were going to do to him exactly what the mob did to Jesus when they hung him on the cross. So hang that one on Revelation 14:11. God marked it down that had they gotten their hands on Jesus, they would have crucified him. So God said spiritually, my son died as a prototype long before he died in the streets of the city of Sodom. And I would just like to ask you one closing question. What would people do to Jesus in the Sodomite community today if he came and said, what you're doing is wrong? They'd kill him again. Spiritually, Jesus is still being put to death, and I think you and I should do something about it. If you got vision, keep it. It's not worth giving up your eyes to please the crowd. Keep your vision. Keep looking. Yeah. Amen, brother. Well, we're going to have some rallies here. Keep your eyes open. Get some of this stuff here. We're going to have a rally here in town first. And get some of this, advertise this, pick it up, go vote. Oh, this is another thing. The vote is going to be a very hard vote this year. In order to vote in the primary, you have to have a voter's card. How many of you got voter's cards? Amen. That's all I got to say.